suspects are being... One case involves the FBI is now offering $100,000 to see if the police are releasing...
Welcome to Misty Mysteries, a true crime and paranormal podcast. I'd like to wish those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving a happy Thanksgiving week. This week, I'm going to be telling you about an unsolved homicide that happened the day before Thanksgiving in 1977 in Pennsylvania. Before I tell you about this case, I'd like to give a warning to my listeners this week. The victim in this case is only 6 years old. I do cover children in other episodes, but this one involves details of a child's death, and I would like to give you a chance to turn it off and tune in next week if this is a subject that is hard for you.
Witchcraft, the occult, extremist beliefs, murder. Tune in to Rogue Darkness each Friday and join host Raven as I uncover horrific crimes committed under the misconceptions and misunderstandings of witchcraft and other belief systems. I'll cover a wide range of crimes involving ritualistic killings and extremist beliefs to cult persuasion and supposed possession. Anything and everything that borders the line of horrifying. There's always three sides to a story. Side A, Side B, and then the truth. Let's uncover the truth together and explore the darkness of mankind, one crime at a time. Available wherever you get your podcast fix, simply by searching Rogue Darkness.
Beth Lynn Barr was born on December 20th, 1970 in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, to parents Charles and Donna Barr. Beth was a little sister to brother James Barr, who was just 3 years older than Beth. Beth and her family lived in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, where her father worked as a police officer. Beth was described as a quiet girl who was very kind by teachers and classmates at her elementary school, Johnston Elementary School. On November 23, 1977, 6-year-old Beth Barr and her classmates had an early release day for Thanksgiving break. Beth, like many of the neighborhood children, would walk home from school. This walk was only 10 minutes, and almost every day she walked home with a friend from school. On this particular day, her friend she walked home with got picked up at school because of early release, leaving Beth to walk home alone. This walk should have only taken Beth 10 minutes, but her parents knew something was wrong when she didn't make it home from school. Donna Barr describes this as her worst nightmare coming true. Her little girl didn't come home from school, and even though there were no Amber Alerts at the time, word of Beth's disappearance got around to the community fast. Beth's father Charles, his coworkers at the Wilkinsburg Police Department, police from neighboring cities, members of Beth's family, and volunteers started to search for Beth in the area around Johnston Elementary School. An elderly neighbor in the area had seen a man carrying a young girl that matched the description of Beth. He carried the girl, believed to be Beth, to his car. The neighbor had an obstructed view of the incident, but described the car as a dull blue sedan with red and white license plates. When police began to knock on doors of homes in the area, hoping someone had more information, they found a 24-year-old woman who had her own experience with a man in a blue sedan with red and white license plates. At 8:30 a.m. on November 23rd, the same day Beth went missing, the 24-year-old woman was waiting for the city bus at the bus stop near Beth's home that Beth would pass to get home from school. A man driving the sedan pulled off the road onto a paved area of an auto repair shop that left the sedan partially in an alley. Parking the sedan as close as he could to the 24-year-old woman, she faced the passenger seat of the vehicle when the man in the sedan said something to the woman that made her feel threatened. She told the man she was going to call the police. This is when the man turned the sedan around and left. In 1977, there were no cell phones, so she needed to walk somewhere or be home to call the police. By the time she got home that night, she didn't feel the need to call the police since the man left her alone when she threatened to call the police on him. But she took notes of his plates. The woman was able to describe this man as a 40-year-old man, 5'10" to 6 foot tall, medium build, with brown curly hair. He wore a gray suit, possibly a tie, and blue square-shaped sunglasses. Oddly, not only did the man's car match the description the elderly neighbor saw, but the man that carried Beth matched the description of the man that harassed the 24-year-old woman. A police sketch was made of the man and released to the press on November 25th, 1977. Police were able to find the blue sedan that the man was driving 5 miles away from Johnston Elementary School at a place called Clooney's Motor Inn at Wilkins Township. The sedan was registered to a car rental business that was ran out of a motel. But when police spoke to the workers at the car rental business, they told police that the blue sedan was not rented out around the time that Beth went missing. The police did a search of the area around the motel and the woods around it, but no evidence or signs of Beth was found. Beth was still missing, and it seems as if there was a dead-end hit with the car. But on December 10, 1977, an arrest was made when a witness identified Wilbert P. Hawthorne as a man who they believed took Beth from the police sketches. Police rushed to Hawthorne's home, hoping that they could find Beth alive with him, but when they got to his home, he was the only person there. He was then arrested and charged with kidnapping, aggravated assault, and felonious restraint in connections with Beth's kidnapping. Just 3 days later, on December 13th, all charges against Hawthorne were dropped when he passed a lie detector test, and his alibi that he had been in Jonestown when Beth went missing was confirmed. For this episode, my main source has been a journalist named Zandy Dudek, who was writing for a local newspaper when Beth disappeared, and she has followed Beth's case her whole career. She now runs a blog to share Beth's story. On her blog, she shares old newspaper clippings from 1977 when Beth disappeared. One of these is from the day that it was announced Hawthorne was released and charges were dropped. They have pictures of him compared to the police sketchings. You can see the similarity in Hawthorne and the sketches of the suspect. I can definitely see why the witnesses would name Hawthorne. For Beth's family, with the charges dropped and all the searches turning up empty, all her family had was hope that whoever kidnapped her had her alive and she would be found and brought home. In a recent interview from 2020, her mother, Donna Barr, told the interviewer, "I think I had convinced myself that she was going to come home and she was going to be okay." On March 22nd, 60 months later, the Barr family's hope turned to grief when a man named Joseph Leonard found a shallow grave with decomposed remains while walking his dog in a wooded area on Johnston Road near the Westland Memorial Cemetery duck pond. When police got to the shallow grave, they knew right away that the remains Joseph found were 6-year-old Beth Lynn Barr because she was still wearing the clothes she wore to school on November 23, 1977. Dr. Cyril Wetch was the coroner for the county when they found Beth. Dr. Wetch made a statement saying the body was decomposed, of course. When we found it, we could only determine she had been murdered. An autopsy on Beth had determined that she had been stabbed in the chest multiple times. When her body was found, the Allegheny County Police were called in to take over the investigation. In May of 1980, the Pittsburgh Press reported that the police investigating Beth's kidnapping and murder believed a man who had kidnapped 10 other children in the Wilkinsburg area may be responsible for her death. The previous kidnappings were 2 boys and 8 girls, between the ages of 6 to 12 years old. The man would speak to the children and lure them into his car he had on and waiting for them. The sketches of the kidnapper from witnesses of the other 10 children's kidnapping matched the sketch from Beth's kidnapping. The crime the man was committing against these children in the area stopped after Beth's death. Detectives working Beth's investigation got 60 tips about this man the week that Pittsburgh Press released this article, but none of these tips helped police catch Beth's killer. 2 theories in Beth's deaths are rumored. The first one, Beth's father arrested someone in organized crime or a person who felt they needed to get back at Charles Barr for their arrest. To get back at him, they kidnapped Beth and took her life, but there has never been any evidence or proof to back up this theory. The second one, Beth's father, Charles Barr, who was a sergeant in the police department, upset or crossed one of the other police officers. In retaliation, this police officer took Beth, knowing she would trust someone in uniform or someone who worked with her father, and murdered her to get back at her father. In 2020, Rick Earl with WIPXI-TV News interviewed Donna Barr, Beth's mother, Robert Payne, an investigator on Beth's case, and Zandy. After this interview, the police received a letter from a woman who told police to look more into the police that were on the case and told them to run DNA and fingerprints from the investigation. Police have said that they aren't sure how reliable this lead is, but on cold cases they do review them and see if any new advancements in forensic technology can bring justice to the victims. At this point, investigators on Beth's case do believe that Beth's murderer and kidnapper will most likely be passed away by this time. Beth Lynn Barr's murder has been unsolved now for 40 years. Hopefully soon her family can see justice for Beth. Her father, Charles, has passed away this year, but her mother and brother will always remember her. She was buried in Woodlawn Cemetery, not too far from where she lived with her parents, and continues to get visits from people all over coming to remember her. Her father now joins her in the Woodlawn Cemetery, and her mother, Donna, has this to say: "We miss our darling daughter. I'm sorry. I don't want anyone to ever forget, and that's why I wanted to do this. I don't ever want anyone to forget her." Her brother has a daughter named Beth that we can guess was named after her aunt that was taken too soon. I would like to end on a poem that Zandy has written about Beth. In the beginning of the poem, she is called Bethy, which her father had been heard calling her. "Remember Bethy, nighttime falling, moon is high, alone and scared, though angels sing. Been so cold, but now it's warm. Remember Bethy, it is spring. Crunching sounds on leaves and twigs, a dog barks, birds are on their wings. Suddenly there is light above. Remember Bethy, it is spring. Gentle hands with so much love, peace in heaven with them bring. Spirits soar, and home she's gone. Remember Bethy, it is spring." Have you heard of Anchor? Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. When I started Misty Mysteries, I didn't know where to go, and Anchor helped me get Misty Mysteries started without charging me an arm and a leg. Anchor is really my suggestion for anyone looking to start a podcast. It has tools that allow you to record and edit in-app or on the website. Anchor distributes your podcasts on all the listening places such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Good Pods, and all your favorite listening places. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place, and best of all, it's totally free, all on Anchor FM and on the Anchor app. Thank you for listening to Misty Mysteries. If you like the podcast, I would love if you headed over to where you listen to not only leave a good review, but subscribe to listen each week. On this episode, you heard an ad from my friend over at Rogue Darkness Podcast, hosted by Raven. This podcast takes crime labeled as cults, witchcraft, and rituals and uncovers the truth every Friday. This podcast is available on your favorite podcast listening places such as Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you want to own your own Misty Mysteries merch, I am so happy to say that the podcast now has its own merch store, and if you don't want to commit to a shirt or sweater just yet, the store also has mugs, masks, and coming soon will be stickers. This will also make perfect additions to your Christmas list or those you know who love to listen to this podcast. You can find Misty Mysteries on all your favorite listening places such as Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Anchor, and so many more. I hope you are having a great day, and I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving or a happy vacation. If you haven't already, do something nice for yourself, and I can't wait for you to tune in on next Sunday's episode.